I once heard you say that those of us who pushed against then President George Bush did more to help him get reelected than anything.
Because attention to a subject is attention to a subject. Because there's no such thing as no. You cast your vibrational votes with your attention to a subject.
Yeah.
Wanted or not wanted.
There is a candidate that people in both parties have some concerns about. And I'm wondering what we can do to affect a positive, cooperative...
Well, there may not be enough time to go all the way back.
Help.
Because here you are, almost all, are at this point of making choices. At this point of a manifestation from which you are trying to choose. And forgetting all of the thoughts that have come before. And so we had this conversation earlier. You got to go back over there. And then make your way back here before you can find alignment with who you are. There is not a more divisive topic that you could bring to the forum.
Sure.
So, how do you find alignment in the midst of divisiveness? How do you come into alignment with this long, and we're not just talking about you and the conversation that brings you to this conversation. We're talking about all that has come before. Is it about unraveling and undoing? Certainly not. We just had that conversation. You can't go back. You can't undo. So you stand where you are. You stand where you are. But where are you standing? And this is going to help you a lot. We're asking the question, where are you standing on the continuum of thoughts turning to things? Where are you standing? Are you standing in the observation and sorting and sifting into piles the rightness and wrongness and goodness and badness of individuals? Is this the mess you're trying to reconcile? Or are you standing with your source and all of the things that you've put into your vortex that are all a part of this election that you're talking about? In other words, what do you think that you as an individual, or even you as mass consciousness, which is nothing more than a collective consciousness of individual consciousness, what do you think that you have been putting into your vortex that has to do with this? What have you put there? What have you put there over time?
A desire for cooperation?
Long time ago? When you say a desire for cooperation, do you mean a desire for cooperation or a desire to stop the lack of cooperation? Because that's where you're debating it out here. Again, we want to remind you, woman wants to have $100,000 so that she can begin her journey. You want to have an election so that you can begin your journey. And you all have a different idea of the election and the way you want it to turn out and the journey that you want to have. But there's a lot more that happened before you got here. And if you could start over here, you might discover that there are ways for you to have what you want regardless of what happens here. In fact, we would go so far as to say what happens here is irrelevant to what happens to you. Has nothing to do with what happens to you unless you get all twirled up in it and use components of that as your excuse to shield yourself from the well-being that's flowing to you otherwise. So you write a letter to all your candidates. Dear candidate so-and-so, I've decided not to think about you anymore. So you can stop spending all the money on all of the advertising, because when I think about you, I block my own well-being. I do not see you as the path to my well-being, no matter what you say. You are not the path to my well-being. You are, in fact, a prohibitor of my well-being these days. So what is in your vortex that has to do with that? What have you put there? Contrast, such a good thing, and variety, and intelligence, and experience, and variety of experience, and personal experience, and willingness to perform in the system, and awareness of a global experience, awareness of humanity, awareness of the potential of joyful life experience. Through the life that you have lived, what has someone's rudeness to you caused you to desire? Harmony. What does your exposure to music tell you about harmony. It requires lots of different notes. It requires lots of different balance. There are lots of ways to put the notes together, and there are lots of ways to put the rhythm of the notes together, and there are lots of pleasing results from the harmonic components. And some notes don't go together at all with other notes, but there are notes that every note goes together with, and there's the potential for pleasurable harmony with every note. What have you put into your vortex? Your desire for individual freedom, your desire to choose the way you feel, to choose the thoughts you think, to not be overpowered by the loudest or the boldest or the most prevalent, the ability to choose, the ability to decide, the ability to make your decisions about who you are, and then enlist the universal forces and energy that creates worlds in order to assist you. The recognition that no one holds the power or the key to your vortex, that only you do. What this has been for most of you is an exercise of disempowerment. It's been a squabbling of who will help you do the thing that they were never meant to do and never will be able to do. It's a turning over your ability to lead your own life to someone else who couldn't possibly lead your own life. You could sit with each one of them and have a full year with every one of them, and you could not effectively convey to them who you are or what you want or need from them. And even if you did, they could not give it to you no matter how hard they tried, because they cannot understand your perspective. That is not a gift that they have to give you. You see, you are looking for righteousness and goodness and truth and justice in all the wrong places. So enjoy the game. Enjoy the game of it. Esther had the most remarkable experience. Some of you heard it because we've been talking about it because it was so astonishing to her. But she was getting ready one morning, putting her makeup on, sitting at her dressing table, and she had her powder. It's a big jar, has a lid that twists off, and she picked up the lid to find the powder, and the lid was empty. And she thought, what happened to my powder? And it's heavy enough. What happened to my powder? It's not there. The dressing table's not very big. It was not there. And so she thought, oh, I hope it didn't come apart in my suitcase, because that's going to be a terrible mess. And she looked, and it wasn't in the suitcase. And so she got involved doing some other things, made the bed, and came back to her dressing table and sat down. And here's the lid, and here's the powder. They're not 3 inches apart. If Jerry had been there, she would have been certain he had been playing games with her. And so she said to us, once she sort of settled down a little bit, because it was shocking. She thought maybe she was crazy. We said to her, it wasn't where you expected it to be, and so you couldn't see it where it was, even though it was right there. And so it made Esther think a lot about beliefs that she holds that keep her from seeing things that are right there. So you get fixated on the negative aspects of something, and it prevents you from ever seeing any positive aspects, even though there may be some. And so Esther decided to do something that she had decided not to ever do again. She decided to watch some of the political discussions to see if she could get past her own prejudices, to see if she could give anyone the benefit of the doubt enough to receive wisdom from someone that she had decided was not wise, to see if she could see past the decisions that she had already made. And she was so surprised, and won't even say it out loud to you, of the intelligence that she found in this one and 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 this one. There were harmony points all over the place that you don't want to speak out loud in a political arena. Or maybe you do. Maybe you don't care. The Republican women are meeting next door. So what it comes down to is you have a point of attraction, and your point of attraction is showing you what it is at all times. And as a mass consciousness, you have created something that now a lot of you are complaining about. And we don't think that it's too different from what's going on in your individual lives. You create things and then you complain about them. And it's time to no longer create them. It isn't that you want to stop complaining, because that would mean no longer enjoy the contrast, but accept your point of attraction and stop trying to make the way you feel someone else's fault. When you take responsibility for how you're feeling, then you have the benefit of moving yourself into harmony with what you really feel and what you really know. And when you do that, you will have that harmonic political process that you all right now feel so desperately that you are in need of. Imagine a room full of talented, wise beings who are aware of and interested in whatever they might do for the good of the whole, who are individually in such alignment with who they really are that they are in the receiving mode, dancing together, inspired together, thinking together, cooperating together, finding harmony of one another. Because it can be that way. You can imagine it and make it be, but you can't condemn what is and ever bring that to reality. You can't continue to look at what is and flail about in your discomfort of what it's all come to and cause it to come to something different than what you are looking at, you see. And so many of you have wisely just withdrawn your attention from it. It's not even a self-saving mechanism. It's an intuitive understanding that my attention here in the way it is being commanded is of no value to the whole. But if you're wanting to be of help to anything, no matter how close up it is to you or how far away it is to you, get into the receiving mode and give yourself the permission to find a positive aspect on somebody on the other side of the political spectrum. Because until you do that, you will never be in harmony with your inner being who loves them all, you see. And this is the point where Esther says, Abraham, you need more information. You need more information. We want to say we have all of the information. And you cannot come into harmony with your power or with who you are as long as you are pushing against anything. So just start deciding what you're for and start listening for evidence of that. And what you'll begin to notice is, in many cases, they start to sound like one another. No matter how far apart they are in their political views, they begin to start reflecting the sentiment of one another. And that really is the wonderful thing that's going on in this particular time, is that so many have become aware of what isn't working, that there is a vortex so powerfully inflated with what is wanting that there is an acquiescing to that. So it's not about the will of the people. It's not about the vote of the people. It's about the vibrational balance of the people. It always has been. It'll feel like we're changing the subject, but we're not. But some years ago, Esther was watching something on television and railing against it. A system that she was feeling such injustice as she viewed it. And we said to her, do not rail against this system. This system has grown out of the vibration of the masses. It's a reflection of what's going on in the masses. And just because there's something that's a reflection of what's going on in the masses doesn't mean that it has to affect you unless you are one who always vibrates with the masses, you see. You have the ability to be an individual advocate of your own well-being and others. You do not have to look at what is and let what is be the only reason that you broadcast and then receive. Isn't that an interesting thing? A whole big bunch of you all twirled up in focusing on what you don't want and broadcasting so much about what you don't want that all you're getting is more of what you don't want. And it's just getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. What you don't want, what you don't want, what you don't want. And we say, you cannot get there. You cannot get to where you want to be from there.